The Graphic Histories Podcast.
I got bit by a radioactive bug. I tried an experimental drug. Went up for a stroll on a gamma testing range. I found an enchanted hurricane. I made a serum that made me small. I modified the serum so it would make me tall. Radioactive isotope in my eyes. Dying alien helped me accessorize. I gained the proportion and strength of a spider. Now I'm invincible and I can fly. I lost my sight, my other senses were heightened. I'm gonna put on my pajamas and go fight crime.
Hey there and welcome to the Graphic Histories Podcast. My name is Andre Mayette, your podcast host. Big thanks to Uka the Mock for our theme song, Superpowers. And big thanks to you, gentle listener, for tuning in once again to another action-packed, fun-filled show. Today, we talk with Andrew Thomas, a comic letterer, artist, and independent comic creator who does some work with his own creator-owned book for many years now and has done some pretty cool stuff. Very great conversation. Very cool guy. We get into a discussion about the lost art of appreciation when it comes to comic letterers and how that is its own art style and how people often forget that. There's a real science, a real art to it. And speaking with people like Andrew can help us appreciate that, I think. There are a lot of parts of comics, whether it be editor, whether it be inker, whether it be colorist, and all those other things that people seem to forget, that it's a really collaborative effort to make a comic a reality. So when you talk to someone who, is really focused and proud to be a letterer, it's very refreshing and cool because that's an aspect you don't get to talk to people in the industry about very often. So very excited to talk with him as well. Being that I record these very far in advance, there's a lot of crazy stuff in the world going on right now. I just had a friend explain to me about this whole Diddy situation. I've heard a few jokes in the media, did not, see anything about it until he explained what's going on. It's pretty nuts. But, it's funny in a way that, hopefully, being that this is like a month out when you're listening to this, will be resolved. And if he'll be in custody and hopefully detained, or at least, getting to the point where they have a trial. I don't want to assume, guilt until it's proven. However, sometimes things happen in the media and you just think, well, that makes sense. That tracks. I'm not totally surprised that person did that thing. As someone who's connected to professional wrestling, people asked me, out of the gate a bunch of times what I thought about the Vince McMahon thing, which is another sort of fall from grace of a public figure. And I remember saying, of all the celebrities that I could see doing that, he's definitely one of them. So not surprised. I could totally see that happening. So, whether he did it or not, I guess remains to be seen for McMahon as well as for Diddy. But this is a month out from when you're going to hear it, so we'll probably have more information on that whole situation. I just think it's always important not to hold celebrities in too high regard because they are humans, and, humans are fraught with complexities, and some are just straight up monsters. And you never know until you know, right? So, who knows? And that's another thing, actually, about heroes, people you look up to. And thankfully, with this show, I've met many people that I've looked up to or whose work I respect, and I've had nothing but good experiences, which means I'm lucky, And I think it just shows that people in the arts, I guess Diddy was too, but, in the creative endeavors when it comes to comics and stuff, seem like a much more empathetic, level-headed, kind of nice, creative person. So I'm hoping that tracks. It has so far. I mean, not without its exceptions. There are people in the comic industry that have been called out for problematic behavior, but rarely have I heard about human trafficking or anything horrible like that. Monstrously horrible like that, but maybe it's a matter of the resources. Maybe no comic person is so famous or rich that they can afford to do that sort of thing, and who knows if they could. I don't know. Speculation. But, I'm just hoping that that is indeed the case, that the comic people are inherently better than some of the other people in the arts industries. But, I'll leave that up for you in history to decide. All right, well, that's enough talk about ridiculous subjects and horrible monsters out there in the world. Let's talk about some fun, good, creative stuff, like Andrew Thomas, who is our guest today. Once I mentioned before, very cool guy, great conversation, had a lot of great stuff to talk about. when it comes to the indie comics experience, and that of a letterer, which is something that I wasn't super familiar with. So I got a chance to talk with them about that, and it's a great conversation. So why don't we dive right into it? Here's my chat with Andrew Thomas.
Oh, not too bad. Just kind of running around like with chicken without its head.
Oh, yes.
Got a little one, so it's just like looked at the time, I'm like, shh.
Oh, quite all right. No worries at all. It's one of those, sometimes they come easy. Sometimes it's just.
Oh, yeah, no kidding.
So I was having one of those at the grocery store, and I got to the line, and I was like, oh, dear God. But thankfully, it moved fast enough for me to get home and get that situated. So,
Oh, right on.
Awesome. How are things?
They're good. They're busy.
How old's the little one you mentioned?
Yeah, I have a little one. He's one. I actually have 4 kids in
Oh,
total.
geez. That is a lot of children.
Yes, so there's a lot of juggling around and a lot of spinning plates and all that. But no, everyone's good.
Awesome.
Yeah. Yourself?
No kids, but
No kids.
just a lot of work, busy mostly with that sort of stuff.
Oh, right on, yeah.
Trying the grind, as it were. So you're in Ontario?
Yeah, I'm in Brantford.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, so just maybe an hour and change outside Toronto.
Oh, okay. I've had like a nice slew of Toronto-based people on lately. So
Man, it's what a rich comic community that Toronto is, and then like in the surrounding areas, it's absolutely bananas.
it's crazy. Yeah, like literally almost all these decent name people that are like doing comics are out there doing work. Like I've talked to several of them, and they're all out of Toronto or the surrounding area. So
Oh yeah.
and the sheer talent, like it's just awesome. I had this conversation with David Cutler, who's a friend of mine. I used to live with him years ago, but he works for Marvel there now, and he's in Toronto.
Oh,
And
cool.
yeah, we're talking I was talking to Becca Kinsey the other day, and we were talking about sort of the Toronto-based, Becca and I were talking about how like the Toronto-based art community is really supportive of each other. It seems like it's like such a rich community of people that really kind of prop each other up and support each other through
Oh, for sure, yeah.
all their projects and stuff, which is super nice. And I talked to Dave, and Dave was like, well, I don't know, I think everybody hates me. And I laughed. I said, I think that's like the seminal sort of imposter syndrome that comes with being an artist.
Oh,
that,
my God, yeah. Yeah, that's guilty. Yeah, absolutely. Just, it's no, yeah, I've definitely felt that a time or two.
Mhm. So did you grow up in Brantford?
No, I grew up in Mississauga. I was born there and lived there up until like the last couple of years, and then we moved out here, where it's big difference. It's much more quieter. I think compared to the Mississauga, but no, we like it here, and I've gotten to meet a lot of other creators in the area too. So it's just it's kind of funny. One of my closest, he's a close friend of mine now, and he's also an up and coming, comic creator. So he also he writes comics with his kids. So he's got a cool kid series called Cereal Box Time Machine. And we met a couple of years ago at the Toronto Comic Con, and he introduced himself, and we were talking. And he's like, "Oh, whereabouts are you from?" And I'm like, "Oh, I just moved to Brantford." He's like, "Oh, I'm from Brantford too." I'm like, "Oh, cool. What part?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm in the West Brant area." I'm like, "Me too." And he's like, "Wait, in the Shellard neighborhood area?" And he's like, "Yeah, me too." It's such a small world, and then it gets even weirder because then both of our kids are in the same class at this, at school. So it's just like it's gotten so it's gotten so crazy how small the world really is, and and as he's starting his journey and as I'm continuing mine, it'll be kind of like I get to help him out where I can, and he's also he's helped me a lot too, because I'm not much of a writer myself, but he is. So it's just like there's been some cool collaborative efforts as well. So yeah, it's just nuts how these things happen, right?
That's awesome. So were comics always a part of your life growing up?
For the most part, yes. I didn't really get into comics in like heavily until high school. Like my high school library had a really nice collection of like Batman graphic novels. Like we're talking like the Essentials, Long Halloween, Killing Joke, Dark Knight Returns. So wanted just check them out one at a time and just read them and like really do like a deep dive. And this was also kind of going along with the release of the Dark Knight. So this was like what, 2007, 2008. So it's just like the hype and getting into that movie as well. So like me and my buddies just kind of like this huge Batman kick. So we're just consuming everything that there is. And but collecting comics, it wasn't until like the New 52 that I really start like doing a deep dive into it and like start collecting Capullo and Snyder's run, which was a huge influence on my decision to go into comics as a profession. So like I have a lot to thank Batman for.
Well, it's interesting because most folks I talk to, like you're younger, I'm assuming. How old are you?
I just turned 34.
Okay, so you're 4 years younger than me. But like most people that I've talked to, like when they come through comics, it's through like a very young age, and it just sort of carries them through life. So it's rare. This is why I find this interesting. It's rare that I talk to folks that have come to it later in the game and start by reading, like, usually you're reading like whatever slop you're given, whatever fun comics you got, and then you work towards discovering the amazing adult-oriented comics that are fantastically written.
Oh, absolutely.
So you jumped right in with the top tier stuff.
Oh, absolutely. Sorry, excuse me. Well, no, totally. Actually, the very first comic that I ever bought with my own money was a copy of Ultimate Spider-Man, I think Volume 4, but it was in Portuguese because we were in Portugal at the time, and they don't have them like on racks. It's so funny. Like you go to, I mean, you can't throw a stone in Portugal and not hit like a cafe. Which is very par for the course in Europe. But there was a particular cafe that I used to go, that I used to pass by every time, and me and my family would kind of frequently visit. That they would kind of put all their books. They had like they had it on a clip, and then the clip was like on a suction cup, and they would kind of like suction cup it to the inside of their window so people could look at it as they walked by. And that's how I saw it. I see a picture of, I think it was like Spider-Man and Green Goblin, Ultimate Spider-Man Volume 4. I'm like, that's so cool. And I look at it, and then this was, I can't remember how old I was at the time, but like I would get an allowance from my parents, from my aunt and uncle would give me money too. So I just used my own money to buy it. I didn't understand a damn thing.
Did you speak fluent Portuguese or read it at least?
I could speak it. I couldn't read it very well. So there was only little bits of it that I could pick up, but no, for the most part, I really didn't know what was going on. It wasn't until I finally read it in English. I'm like, oh, okay, this makes sense.
Yeah, I had some German Spider-Man comics that someone had given me at one time. It was like Arachnid Man or something, and I remember like flipping through them and finding it quite interesting to see, I can see why they kind of say that to learn how to like read in other languages and stuff, it's better to watch TV and kind of fill yourself with the world, because then you start putting the things together.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
But is your family from Portugal? Is that why you go there so often? Or
my background? Yeah, I used to go every year, and so I have family back there, and that used to be a thing just to go there, and that's also how I got into Dragon Ball as well. I used to watch Dragon Ball in the Portuguese dub, and so like just there's a lot that a lot of my like the fundamental things that I enjoy as a kid were because of my trips to Portugal and things that I've discovered there, and then coming back here, and I'm like, oh, we have that here too, and just like, so I kind of pick it up. So it's interesting how these things that you discover. And so but yeah, no, it wasn't until, like I said, high school that I really started to really pay attention to it. And then the New 52 run is where I really started to kind of look at the comic as an art form, and then just like, oh, hey, I want to do this. This looks cool. And Greg Capullo's art is also very instrumental to how I looked at dissecting a page and just dissecting how he tells stories in a very visual medium and stuff. So oh yeah, for sure.
That's awesome. So Capullo's a really cool artist. And that seminal run of his and of their of that whole arc of Batman was so super interesting and brought some really cool and new stuff to the table.
Oh, for sure.
Which is
I
funny.
think,
Sorry, I was gonna say, as a fan like yourself, getting into it, like that's the one thing about DC that kind of annoys me more than anything. It's like they just reinvent the continuity every so often, like every like 10 years, and then you have to relearn everything.
yeah.
But you kind of understand the reasoning for it because people like yourself that jump on and get hooked from learning the new story, like getting the current continuity
For
and
sure, for
not
sure.
being weighed down by the old stuff.
Yeah, and then by the time they were wrapping up their run, I that was basically my time to jump off, and that's when I stopped collecting. So I would when New 52 came around, like I was collecting all the number ones, like I was picking them up, but Batman was the only one I really read and paid attention to. I think I read like The Flash and like the Action Comics as well, but I wasn't as invested into the story as I was with Snyder's Batman.
It was very good.
Um,
I got very into the Animal Man and Swamp Thing.
oh yeah.
Comics. I've always been a big Animal Man fan. Grant Morrison's always been one of my favorite comic writers.
Mhm.
So and Jeff Lemire's Canadian.
Oh, for sure.
So big supporter of that. So it was pretty cool to have him working on that book and bring it to weight, and then overlap it with Swamp Thing and do what they did with it with the Rot and all that. It was super cool.
Oh yeah, and I yeah, basically after that, I just kind of go back into like the trades and the graphic novels, and then I'll just read them like at a time, all in one shot, really, instead of having to wait monthly or whatever the release for them are now. So, that's how it is. And then like nowadays, I find it's more of a chore to kind of find the time to read comics. Like I really have to kind of like plan ahead when I because I don't get a whole lot of time just to sit down and read. So like I just plan ahead. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna start reading this. I'm gonna do that. And like I recently read or reread all of Chew
Nice.
from Image Comics, and it's one of my absolute all-time favorite books. So I kind of make it a point to like reread it every now and then.
Yeah, I love that
Um,
book. I've had Rob on the show, the artist Rob Gilroy.
oh yeah, he's
Yeah,
fantastic guy.
yeah, super
Um,
nice guy.
but mhm.
No, that's
Uh,
super. So when did you decide? Was it after you got into reading and got into the 52? Is that when you decided to start drawing, like to get into comics as an art
Yeah,
form?
so drawing, I've been doing all my life, and like there was, I would always be drawing, either Dragon Ball or I draw, I would draw Batman too. Like I was big on, funny enough, I was big on like the Batman Forever and Batman and Robin were like the big ones that I would rewatch as a kid, and then I'd go back and watch the Keaton ones. But like I fell right in that age group, where Val Kilmer was my Batman for a hot minute.
I don't think I've ever heard anyone say that, which is it's great because I watched that movie a lot. Like I'm 4 years older than you, but I was in the pocket too, kind of. Like I watched that movie. I had it on VHS. I didn't watch Batman and Robin as much, but Batman Forever I had in VHS and I watched it a ton.
Oh yeah.
Batman and Robin was the first time I realized, oh, maybe a superhero movie isn't going to be good because when you're a kid, and you're just like, oh, I love all because I'm enough older than you that I probably was just getting to the age where I was like, oh, movies can suck sometimes. I was just happy,
Oh
and then I was like, when they're skating down the giant statues and ice hockey fighting and just Schwarzenegger doing the Schwarzenegger thing. I guess I just was so in love with the animated series that to see them sort of piss all over it kind of in their own way. Like I'm not the type of nerd or comic fan that gets really upset when they change anything or anything. Like I'm very accepting whatever. As long as it's good, I don't care. But it was just such a departure, I guess, from what I was hoping that I really was first like, oh, okay, maybe these are gonna suck a little bit. But I was still locked in my own way.
yeah, no, I really, that was my jam, when I
Mhm.
was a kid. I enjoy the heck out of it, really. And then yeah, no, it's as you get older and you kind of just start analyzing and being a little bit more critical of it,
Mm.
and you're like, yeah, I mean, now it's kind of it's more nostalgic for me, but I can see the flaws, the plethora of flaws in that movie.
Oh
But
yes.
going back to that whole to the illustration, yeah, it wasn't until I started, reading, Snyder and Capullo's run that I really wanted to take a crack at actually doing comics. So that was one goal was was learning basically how to like teaching myself how to draw comics. So there was we'd go to Chapters or hit the library and look for like the how to those instructional guides how to draw comics or how to put your own put together how to publish your own comic. And that was what I wanted to do. Was I really wanted to publish my own comic. I knew that there it was a long road. It was a long it was a high ambition to want to say, oh, I want to draw for Batman, I want to draw for a big publisher. I wanted to kind of start by doing my own thing. I wanted to tell my own story, and I did. So 2014 I published my very first indie comic. It was called PostHuman, and it was basically like a gritty reboot of Inspector Gadget.
That sounds also something I've never heard before, but it sounds great.
Yeah, it was just
totally
like,
down
oh,
for
what?
that.
Yeah, I loved it as watching that show as a kid. So it's just like, what if you take that concept and then just kind of like, oh, make it great, like do a gritty reboot, and we set it in like a post-apocalyptic London, and so like it was fun. And then I got to do it again with Auric of the Great White North, which is my co-created superhero series, or Canadian superhero series that I do with our writer Davis Dewsbury. Sharon Gauthier is our colors, and Josh Rhodes is also like our he's also a writer, but he acts more of as an editor for us. And that's really when I kind of started taking things into high gear and really learning not just the publishing side of it, but also like learning how to letter, which brings me to where I am today, and a bunch of other things. So it's it's been a fun ride, because getting to do that, develop your own indie series, and you put it out there and getting the feedback, and then as I get busier and busier, it becomes harder to maintain a schedule or lack thereof for indie comics. But absolutely, it's been I think that was from the get-go. It was definitely something I wanted to establish, as I wanted to create my own thing, and I wanted to put something out there rather than just like, oh, my goal is to work for Marvel or DC and nothing else, right? I wanted to do something different. And
Yeah, well, it sounds like you succeeded.
I like to think it's still going well. Like Auric is still, next year will be 10 years since we put out our very first issue, and this year we're going to be putting out the final issue in our current storyline. So there's lots to look forward to, and we would have our regular chat discussions with the team, and we'd like talk about like cool ideas for new stories and stuff like that. There's so much that you can this character really does give room to how should I say, very open for there's a lot of stories you can tell with this character. So it's like it's kind of open. I don't want to say ambiguous, but like he has a rich past that we haven't gotten to explore yet.
Oh, excellent. And you said you fell into the lettering side of things as well. Is that something that was like a surprise as far as like becoming something that you were, efficient at? Or
it was definitely surprising how many doors would open because of lettering.
Really?
Yeah, that one of the most crucial pieces of advice that I've ever gotten, even when I was starting to do indie comics, was it was actually from a shop owner, and he would kind of look through my stuff, and he's like, well, make sure you learn how to letter. And I'm like, what do you mean? And like, well, you can have like the most gorgeous piece of art ever that's ever been drawn, but if the lettering is subpar, or if it looks like trash, it's just going to completely take the reader out of the experience. It's going to completely clash with the art, and it's going to ruin the whole thing. Like the lettering is an art form in its own right, and it has to kind of complement the art. And so you got to learn how to do it properly. There are some do's and don'ts that he would give me, tips like websites to check out, and I did, and I learned them. I learned like the basics that would help me with my indie comics, and then I did a deep dive into like Comic Craft and Blambot, and like these were the absolute essential keys to, to perfecting my craft as a letterer. And funny enough, I get an email from an editor at Chapterhouse who does Captain Canuck, and they're like, "Oh, someone told me that you can letter," and I'm like, "Yeah, I've lettered my own stuff." And he's like, "Oh, well, do you want to letter Captain Canuck? We have an issue that needs to go, like ASAP, and we we need a letterer." So I'm like, "Yeah, sure, why not?" And at the back of my head, I'm like screaming, I'm like, "Oh my God, like what am I gonna do?" So they kind of give me like the the early issues to kind of like study up on the style guide, and then they gave me everything I needed, and I turned it around in like a couple of days, and they're like, "Ah, great, here's another one." And then they just kept giving me stuff until they hired me on as the in-house letterer. So I did all their titles, all their like they expanded not just Captain Canuck, but they did this whole comic universe on their own. And I did, and I got to do that. So that was really cool, because from there I started getting, emails from uh Archie, and then I got one from another Toronto-based publisher called Joe Books, and they had the license to do Disney Princess. So I got to do a few, comic strips of Disney Princess, which was really cool. And so it's just like I started kind of like realizing that this um was starting to take me places, and I'm like, I should probably like ride this wave and see how it goes. And yeah, that leads me to meeting, Kevin Smith and working with him, and getting to and then because of that I get to do cover art. So like I'm using the lettering, to kind of sneak my art abilities, through the back door, so to speak. So yeah, it's just it was extremely unexpected, but I'm very grateful for the opportunities that I've gotten as a result. And I'm extremely happy with not only with the work I'm doing, but the fact that I get to advocate for the art of lettering, and I get to educate and tell people all about it. And people who don't quite understand, what the significance is. And so I get to, be one of the small group of people that kind of, wears it on their banner loud and proud that, oh, I'm a letterer too. And it's not just a copy and paste job. It really is, art in its own right.
I think my first like introduction with how important lettering is, or at least with recognizing it as the art form that it is, was watching, I think, Stan Sakai do it at
Oh yeah.
a Comic-Con in Montreal. And like I had my own little indie comic out, and I'd given it to him and to Sergio Aragonés, who were beside each other. And really really cool that both of them told me to come back the next day, and that night they'd read it and give me a bunch of tips. So it was super positive experience. But just watching him like hand letter and do it his way, and it was like, and then realizing he did all the Gru books, and he did like all these other books as well on top of Usagi Jimbo, just lettering. And
Oh yeah.
a good friend of mine is Troy Little as well, who does a lot of his own lettering as well. And watching him work on it, I was like,
Oh
oh my
yeah.
God, like he makes it look so effortless. And
And,
it's alarming to me, because like, your penmanship has to be so good to be able to do it that way and to do it hand like that. And
and
it's insane.
Oh, for sure. And that's the one thing that I joke about all the time, is the fact that my penmanship is actually trash, really. It's always been trash. And you're like, "Oh, really?" And you're a letterer and you do it. No, because for the the bulk of the time I'm doing it, it's digital, right? It's,
Yeah.
you have digital typefaces that are designed designed by, letters themselves.
Mhm.
But the last couple of years I've really been practicing how to do it, and I've finally developed my own default typeface for lettering that I use, on various projects. Like I've used it on Kevin Smith's Quick Stops, and I've used it on Mosley with Rob Guillory.
Mhm.
So it just, that process in itself was it was a little bit stressful, because I'm like, well, this doesn't look right. It doesn't look like that. It's supposed to look like, there's a certain way that there's a certain method to creating letters themselves for comics.
Mhm.
There's a way that the e's are just like the certain slants of like on certain bars of the letters and stuff like that. So I'm like looking at my work trying to compare it to like Blambot, and I'm just like, oh, it looks like crap, and but at the same time, I kind of have to pull it back and reassure myself. It's like, no, this is yours. It's not theirs. It's yours.
Yeah.
Right. So
that's awesome. So you got to work with Rob on a project after
I did,
the
and the funny story. So I have him on Facebook, and I'm obviously been a big fan of his since Chew, and he's also been one of the one of my top like inspirations for art. It's very it's a vast difference between like Greg Capullo and then like Rob Guillory. Like they have their own defined unique styles, and it influences how I view comics as a whole, or drawing comics, because with Rob it's he does his own thing and he breaks all kinds of rules, and it works. A book like Chew should not work, but it totally does. You got to have the right team on it. So I have him on Facebook, and he threw up a post where he's like, oh, I just I'm starting the breakdown of my new creator on project or something like that. And I just out of the blue, I just shot him a comment. I'm like, "Hey, do you need a letterer?" And he responded. And he was like, "You know what? I actually might." And so he hits me up, privately, and he's like, "So yeah, send me your portfolio. Let's see what you got." And then he showed it to the folks at Boom, and they're like, "Yep, okay, yeah, we like you, and we want you to come on." And I'm like, "Oh my god, like this is getting to work with Rob is just he's fantastic." So that it's just one of those firm beliefs that if you don't go out and if you don't put yourself out there, or if you don't, the worst that people can say is no, right? Like it doesn't hurt to even ask, and who knows, like something that just might happen. Like a lot of these, I don't want to say it's it's luck or fluke, but a lot of these projects that I get to work on, it just happens that I kind of put myself out there and I kind of just ask, or I just in the case of like for Kevin Smith, I've gotten to speak to him, through a Zoom call during the pandemic because I was part of his fan club. But I got to meet him in person in Calgary when he was a guest. He was and so was I. I was one of the guest artists. So one of the cool benefits of being a guest artist is that you get to bypass lines. So I didn't have to wait in line to go and meet Kevin. So I'm like, okay, I want to go meet Kevin. And this was also around the time where he had just announced that he was doing an imprint with Dark Horse called Secret Stash Press. And I'm like, okay, it's my mission. Like I gotta talk to him, and I gotta letter his comics, and I had a mission. And so time comes to go up there and meet him, and I introduced myself, and he remembered me to the point where he called me by my Instagram handle, which is the Fat Man Who Letters. He goes, "You're the Fat Man Who Letters," and I'm like, "Yeah, that's me." And so we got chatting a little bit, and he's like, "So is that what you do for a living? Do you letter?" And I'm like, "Yeah, that's primarily my bread and butter, so to speak." And he goes, well, I'm doing some new comics. Do you want to come on board and letter my comics? And I'm like, yeah. And I didn't even have to ask him. He offered the gig right on the spot.
Wow.
And it was nuts because I was on cloud nine that whole weekend until the panic started setting in. It's like, oh my god, like he just made me a con promise and he's gonna forget, and then like, oh my god, like it's not gonna happen. But sure enough, a couple weeks later, I get an email from Dark Horse, and they're like, "Yo, Kevin wants you to come on board. Here's the contract." So
that's awesome.
Yeah,
it's a whole other world for that now, right? Like I've talked to so many folks that had to like go on a bus to New York to like hang around Marvel offices and hopefully get seen by the right person with their portfolio. Now it's like you can just run into people, like you can reach out, and there's so many different ways to reach out and talk to people and get your work out there and get connected to people, even like Kevin Smith. I mean, he's kind of a unique animal in that he remembered who you were just from your Instagram, but also from being in this fan club video.
That's the part that really threw me off was that he threw my handle right back at me. And I'm just like, wow, I didn't realize, you didn't realize, you paid attention, or like, because a guy like him, he's got like a million other things going on. It's like, I'm a mere peasant, compared to
But I think he's always understood the importance of like his fan base. Like, I mean, obviously nobody's anything without their fans. So they're the ones that are paying to, watch the things that you're making or be a part of it. But, he's always been so engaged with his fandom to a level that I think he's really like, he's realized that that's what's made him who he is, right? Like being accessible to his fans and being someone that they can see as a friend beside just a guy whose work they like, in a way.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he definitely, and like I getting to work with him, also it really kind of like affirmed my belief and trust in his ability that he absolutely is a collaborator, and he loves collaborating with other people, especially when the team doing a thing on your own is cool, but like getting to team up with some friends and making a thing and just like that's the one of the coolest parts about it is getting to not only having your own say, but like see what everybody else has to offer as well, and like because everyone has unique skills that kind of elevate and make the thing a lot, the project so much better. So, oh yeah, it was such a cool process because he was so down to earth, and it was just like you really he's exactly what you would want him to be, right? So like I'm super grateful for that, and then like we would he told me once, or at the beginning, he's like, oh, when you send these drafts for the lettering drafts to the editor, I want you to send them to me as well, because he wants to look them over, and he wants to, as a writer himself, he wants to make sure everything is perfect. And then he would send me notes, and like we would kind of have a back and forth, and he'd give me some revisions, and which, funny enough, for the most part, they're actually pretty short. Like they're just one or like 3 to 5 notes really max, and then that's it, and then the job's done, and then you move on to the next thing. So yeah, it's it's hard to kind of put that whole experience into words, because now it just feels like it just feels like a regular occurrence, but at the beginning it's just like, oh my god, like how do you present yourself, and how do you conduct yourself in front of him, and you want to always put your best foot forward, and so it's, oh yeah, absolutely, just complete bananas.
Yeah, that's amazing. And super cool that like, you had that connection and it all just happened through an appearance at a con. Like that's stellar.
Yeah, that's and that's above all else, it's just I have a cool story to tell on top of that, just like how it all happened. It's just not like, oh, I submitted myself, through, the regular channels, and I got to meet him, and no, like I have a cool, unique story. But oh, for sure. Like,
well, how did your family take it when you're like, I'm getting into comics? I always feel like I don't know if anybody remembers that scene from The Simpsons when Homer just is sitting at the table and he's like they're making fun of Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and he's making the circus tent out of mashed potatoes, and someone's like, "Is everything okay?" And
that's right. Yeah.
and he just stands up and goes, "You've held me down long enough. I'm going to clown college." Like, I always kind of feel like it's that sort of event with like, because some people, a lot of the artists I've talked to, or people that's involved with comics, have said that their parents are super supportive of it. So I always kind of assume it's like one of these these events that we're like, oh god, our son's going down the wrong path, or
yeah. I did I mean, it wasn't just comics at the beginning. Like I did a lot of freelance work. Like I was basically a stay-at-home dad. I mean, I still am. But I kind of when I was talking to my wife and everything, we were kind of really thinking about how to do we plan for this, and really the realization is that you don't. Is like you just kind of have to kind of pull the trigger and just kind of do it. And so my wife had, she works as a nurse, and so she has she's got shift work and stuff like that. So I'd stay home, and I'm like, I'll be the stay-at-home dad. And then I started doing freelancing, so a lot of graphic design work, logos, print, all kinds of print media. Actually, one of my very first gigs was doing a graphic design and developing sprites for a mobile game.
Oh, really? That's
Yeah,
interesting.
which I went to because I went to school, like I went to college for game design,
Ah, cool.
and it wasn't until after I graduated that I kind of zero in and focus. I wanted to focus on traditional illustration. Growing up, I wanted to work as a Disney animator, so but at that time, the idea of creating games was really interested me, but um, by the time the program was over, I'm like, it just kind of really. I, I'm trying to figure out the word here, but I knew at the end of it's like, no, it's not games I want to do. I want to stick to traditional illustration. It's almost like it affirmed my core belief of what I wanted to do.
Well, I feel like we get
So
pushed into that, like as I'm a graphic designer as well. But it seems like when we're kids, and I've talked to this before, whenever anybody finds that you can draw, they're always like, oh, maybe you can draw for Disney, or maybe you can draw. Like they immediately think you can go do that thing, like because you're artistic, you'll go to right to the top of the only thing that they see that you could make money doing, which is
right,
like,
exactly,
like they don't
exactly.
say comics, or they don't say, because that pays well enough if you get to a certain level. It's just, it's always like this is the only thing I could think of that you would make money is being an animator or a game designer, I guess, to be a more a newer sort of version of that.
Yeah,
But
yeah, absolutely.
it always becomes one of those when people try to push you into some kind of industry that plays to being artistic, but also, something that makes money, which is obviously what parents are mostly concerned about for their kids more than anything,
Yeah,
as
yeah.
long as you're making money.
So, I mean, I'm very thankful. Like my wife is extremely supportive, and
No.
she's also there to check me. Like, oh, if I have like these these crazy dreams, and she'll just kind of like bring you back down to reality. It's like, okay, that's cool, but do you realize how ridiculous that sounds, or how like unfeasible that is? And just like, so you should kind of like have to knock me down a little bit just to bring me back down to earth.
Yeah, it's good to have reality check every once in a while.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm like, yeah, you're right, absolutely. But it those things like that kind of just sit in the back of my head. I'm like, one day I'll do it. But yeah, no, I've been doing that for it's about 10, no, it's about going on about 12 years now that I've been doing like that. I've been at home, and I just kind of, and the struggle is real. I mean, even today, it's like you're still not everybody's gonna hand you something. I still gotta
Oh yeah.
promote yourself, as a graphic designer yourself. So it's like it's not just that, but you're also you got to be your own social media manager, you got to be your own marketer, you got to be this and that. So you got to wear all these many hats. So the grind never stops. And there have been times where I've been real fortunate enough where I have a to-do list of books to letter. So like there's always that sense of security, like, oh well, I have this and to look forward to, and you can kind of plan accordingly. And then sometimes when the well dries up and you're like, okay, what do you do now, right?
Yeah.
So that's there have been times where it's just like, okay, where's the next where's my next meal gonna come from, and how do you get feed the kids and stuff like that. So
Well, you're essentially, like I have my own business doing graphic design, and comics or something I did a long time ago, just as an indie thing, which I really want to get back to. I kind of miss it. I kind of got caught up with work and forgot about some of the, not forgot, but just the passion projects that you enjoy putting
oh,
together.
absolutely,
But essentially, like comic people, that people don't realize that you're not. People think that when you work for Marvel or you work for some big company like Archie or something, that's it, right? Like you made
you're
it, you're
set for
done, you're
life.
done.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. And it's like not necessarily, because it's all based on a freelance sort of basis. At the end of the day, you're
all
still,
contract. Yeah,
yeah. At the end of the day, you're basically self-employed, which I am, and I understand. I always say peaks and valleys, and people ask because sometimes you're riding high and sometimes you're a little low, but you gotta hope when the highs last long enough to keep the lows, and it's all part of it, right? So.
absolutely.
Yeah, people don't
Yeah,
really realize that. They really think that because you get attached to some big company, that's it. You're done. You made it. You're set for life.
yeah,
And that is not the reality in most cases.
yeah. No, that's very much that's certain. I mean, I've definitely had I've definitely felt that my share of I've had that feeling, that naive that naive notion of like, oh, you put in your licks now, and then with this startup company, and then down the road they're going to take care of you, that kind of thing. And then it just kind of falls apart, and you're like, well, that didn't work out, and so now it's back to square one.
Yeah, pretty much. But I just saw you announce that you're doing a alternative cover for the Turtles, which is really exciting.
That's right. Yesterday, yeah,
That's huge, yeah.
It was a lot of cool. It was a lot of fun with me and Kuya's Collectibles, which they're a small convention out here in like the southwestern, like the Niagara region of Ontario.
Nice.
And we just kind of teamed up, and I'm like, this would be cool. And since I'm on a mailing list with IDW, so they tell you the future opportunities that you can do, and they tell you how much it's going to be. And so we just kind of teamed up, and we're like, this would be really cool to do, and to have it as an exclusive for his show, later this summer, and then for me getting to say, hey, I got to work on Ninja Turtles. And so absolutely, I've had a lot of fun, especially with these exclusive covers that I've done for not only also for Kevin's books, but I also got to do one for Star Trek for Capcan, which is a online they're a major online retailer here in Canada. They're actually based out of Brantford, and happens to be 10 minutes away from me. So it's getting to do a lot of fun, these fun ideas. Like I've been having a lot of fun with sorry, second.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Doing these retro covers and actually making them look retro, and kind of give them that distressed look. I
was going to ask you about that, because I saw the one you'd posted for Spawn, which I thought was really cool. Like your process.
The Spawn. Yeah, I figured there was going to be a sea of your typical comic book pose kind of illustrations. So I'm like, you know what? Let's do it. Let's do like a retro one, and I have so much fun doing it because I get it's a great conversation starter, especially at a con, because people will look at it and thinking it's an old comic, but I'm like, no, it's made to look that way. And you got the the dog ears and the tape and the coffee stains. Oh man, it's a lot of fun to doing that. But that's where I get to play around and get really experimental with stuff like that, to kind of be looking at certain brush techniques and paper textures and stuff. So just kind of, how do you really make it look as authentic as it possibly can without actually being actually damaged and stuff. So no, it's a fun exercise to do.
Maybe that's the key. Maybe print them like normal books and then just take them out somewhere and throw them around
and beat them,
step on them and beat them up and put a tear and put some tape on it. And that might be the final step. I mean, I get ads targeted ads on social media all the time for those apps, to make your comics look old, to put the dots in and do all that sort of stuff.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah,
I must be, since I started, I got a drawing tablet and I've been doing a lot of art that way. So I'm guessing that since you get Procreate and you start doing that, it starts picking up that you're using that sort of stuff.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, no. So I think that's it, man. Maybe that's it. Just get a big batch of comics and just beat them up, put some coffee on them, and probably a fun afternoon.
Oh yeah, that would be great. And then
you got to do the one thing that every comic fan gets whenever they go to buy some comics from a used store, is when you open the page and you find someone cut the panels out and made a collage somewhere. Because I remember I got I think it was the first appearance of the Hobgoblin at an event somewhere, and it was one of those guys out of Toronto, I think, that comes with all the rare comics to sell them at these little events out here in Nova Scotia. And I got the first appearance of the Hobgoblin. It was always kind of a favorite Spider-Man villain of mine, I remember. And it wasn't crazy expensive, but it wasn't cheap either. And I remember I opened it and there's a big panel cut right out, the line. Somebody had made a collage or something of it. Several of the panels were cut out of it. And I was like, oh my God. And this guy was one of those fly by night, you'll never see him again kind of guys.
Oh, that's so funny. Yeah, that'd be great. And then you get to send that to CGC and get a 0.5 grading and just
yeah. Slab this, please.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I love that. That's so funny.
Well, maybe that my gift to you. Maybe that's your new marketing ploy. It's just
Perfect. Yeah, I'll take it. We'll do the one of a kind, like beaten to hell variant, and
I think this actually might take off. I think I get a kick out of it especially if you did it if it was on a book that was designed to be an old concept or an old
yeah, you can actually get printed on like printed on newsprint.
Yeah, oh yeah,
and then really start to like weather it down and make it look.
There's some guys out here that do an indie comic called the Grandaway Comics, and
yeah, I know them. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I've been trying to get them on the show for years, but they I don't know, they just don't.
They were MIA for a hot minute, and I think they just recently posted that they were coming back with something else.
Good. Well, like they're going to keep doing the comics they done, like Street Fighter.
I think so. Yeah.
Awesome. They're great, super fun, but they're all like in the newsprint. They're all done in the really old style, and it's super hits that nice nostalgia ping in the brain to flip through those books, especially their art style is beautiful.
Oh, for sure. Oh yeah, I love that. I think I can see the appeal, or I've actually met quite a few other creators that they kind of, that was their niche, was they made it look like an older book, and played it off like, oh yeah, no, this is old, this is I worked on this way back when, just kind of like play it up as a,
till you look at the date at the bottom of the comic. But well, it's like I always thought that when I was a kid, because there was Alan Moore was doing a lot of work for like Image at one point, and he had done this 1963 series where every issue was kind of a takeoff of existing old Marvel characters, or DC. I think it was mostly Marvel. So there's a character called the Fury that was kind of like Spider-Man, and they're all sort of mirroring different old concepts that had come out then, but they'd done them all to look in a really old style. And I believe it was supposed to all wrap up with some big event that Moore had left Image before it happened. So you just get these single issues of the series, but it was very interesting and very cool. And ever since that, I've always had an affinity for those sort of books that sort of, or even like his Supreme book, which kind of feels like an old book.
Yes, yeah, that's
stuff
right.
Like that as well. Just the way, they really have fun with that continuity and play with that.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Awesome. So is there a dream project of yours or anything that you're working on coming up that you can discuss, I guess? That
it kind of goes back to, like, if I'm going to continue climbing this ladder, eventually I do want to work on a Batman gig. I definitely do want to work on something that's Batman, even if it's lettering or everything. Just, I would, that's pretty much on the top there. And then I'll retire, just like, so just kind of give myself a goal, and then just stop, and then I'll go work at Home Depot or something.
Just telling the kids that work there about how you used to draw Batman. You letter Batman one day.
That's right. That's just one issue, and that's it. I'm done.
I perfected it. They're never going to make this better. Close down lettering. It's been finished. It's the best.
Yeah,
that's funny.
No, definitely. I'd love to do something for the big two, in whatever fashion, and then just kind of, aside from that, I really just want to be able to continue with Auric, my series Auric of the Great White North, and just want to keep going and telling those stories, and and I want to be able to. I have like that, and that's the thing with us creative types. It's just got so many damn ideas, and not enough time to do it, right?
Yeah.
So
and you never finish one because you get started on the other one.
Exactly.
The new shiny thing hits your eye. I'm terrible for that. That's like the worst thing for me. I have like 1,000 ideas, and everyone's like, "You should finish one of these," and I'm like, "Someday," just never, because something else catches my eye. But that's why I'm trying to really focus on doing one thing. Like Sandy Carruthers is in PEI. He worked on the Men in Black comics when they.
Oh yeah, I know Sandy.
Yeah, so he's a friend, and I was at a convention this past weekend in PEI actually that I was chatting with him at, and he has a book coming out that's like a collaboration book where it's like everybody does little stories, anthology comics. So he asked me about doing it, and I was like, oh, that'd be great. That would be a great getting back in, to do a six-page story that's a little horror story, which I'm a big horror guy, so it would be really fun. I just got to figure out exactly what that's going to be, and then so I feel like that'll be kind of me wading back into the waters and doing it again, because I really miss it.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, no, the dream wise, that's that's probably you know something I definitely would love to do. But realistically, my realistic goals are just finish what I started it.
Yeah, just keep
And
swimming, right?
that's right. That's really it, and just see where the journey takes me. You never. That's the one thing I guess I've learned from this whole experience is that it's not going to go as you plan. It'll never go as you plan, and if I didn't if I didn't pick up lettering as a serious gig full time, then I wouldn't have gotten to do many of the things that I got to do today. So it's just like I'm kind of pat myself on the back that I had the inclination to kind of follow that particular thread, right?
Well, that's yeah, that. Well, I mean, the thing is, like, I think with your body of work, I don't think it's unreasonable to think that you'll eventually get there for sure. But I also think, like, when it comes to that stuff now, is it just a matter of reaching out to, because like the channels of submitting to those companies are kind of have changed, right? Like it's not as simple anymore as bringing a portfolio to a convention.
It's true. I mean, now because I've had some back and forth with like mainly I would say with Dark Horse and like Boom, I was able to reach out a couple times and say, hey, I want to submit something, what's the process? And I would just get a direct line to acquisitions or whoever's doing that, and I would just kind of pitch to them directly. Sometimes it doesn't go through, and sometimes they're like, oh, it's something that we might consider later on, but and then sometimes they go for it, but yeah, I think it's just because I would say I get to put in the work first, do the work first, and then kind of try to ask for those things later when I have a nice back and forth with the editors and stuff. So just so that they have a proven track record that they that I can that I'm not just a bunch of hot air. I actually can follow through. So I think that's kind of crucial. I wanted to establish and make those develop those relationships with them, and then like, hey, I actually have something that I think could you might be interested in, and come take a look.
So many of the stories that I hear from people that I've talked to, like, are always like, I met this guy in this one book at this one company, and then later on down the line, he's like, he works somewhere else and he's in a higher position. It's like, oh, hey, why don't you come do this? So, it's like, it is very much about maintaining the relationships you have with, those people in the industry that
Absolutely
might come back and reward you sometimes. If you want to reward you, I mean, hopefully you're not just in it to get something out of it, but
that's right.
Those friendships do tend to carry you through. And
oh, absolutely, it does. It's really, and that was part of the journey, or part of the learning experience when I was back at the beginning, when just doing working on my own indie comic, is networking with so many people, and that's why conventions are so important, and getting to talk to people, and you take as much advice and criticism and as you can, and you make friends and acquaintances, and yeah, and absolutely, it's important because you can't. I mean, you could try to do everything on your own, as a nobody, but it will take you, especially if you go through those channels. But it could you might be waiting a little bit longer. You know what I mean? Like it might take you a bit longer to kind of go through. I'm not exactly sure where I'm going with this line of thought, but but I think the key part of it is that networking is crucial in comics, and learning, and then the you never stop learning. You hear all these stories from all these fantastic artists and writers, from back in the day, and how they used to go through, and how they used to we had the pleasure of getting Dan Day to do an issue of one of our books on Auric, and it takes place during World War II, and he was totally down for it. But like, we would sit down and he actually tell us all these stories about like how he did, he really worked for everybody, and so he kind of like just name drop a bunch of people, and it's just like you can't just sit there in awe and like wow, like it's amazing, the what you can learn and what um seeing another person's perspective and seeing their how they navigated through the industry, back before computers and before, the internet and all that, and how things were done. It's just, oh man,
That's a lot
it
of the
boggles the
joy.
mind.
It's a lot of the joy I get from doing this is from, you meet people. Like I just talked to Stephen Grant, who's been like a Marvel writer since
Oh
he wrote the
yeah.
first Punisher miniseries. And it's just like to hear sort of his stories from back in the day and how he got, out there and got discovered and all the work and all the various projects he's worked on. It's really cool just to hear everyone's individual stories about how they got there and the steps they went to get there. But
Oh, absolutely.
as a father of four, do you like is instilling a love of comics in your kids something that you take pride in?
My kids, especially my oldest, he'll read it every now and then, but he starts, he's really got a love for animating.
Oh yeah,
He does a lot of, like, he has a tablet and he'll do his own cartoons and his own like animation shorts and stuff,
that's
and he
awesome.
really digs it. So I'm like kind of seeing how much he really digs it, and so I'll kind of like show him some other stuff. It's like, oh, well, look at this and look at these tutorials, and if you want to do something a little bit better, maybe use this program instead of that program. And my second oldest, yeah, he likes to draw too. I would say that the creative gene is definitely showing up with them. Everyone's expressing themselves differently in their own ways. So and my daughter, she loves to dance, so that's how she gets, creative, and so there's a lot, there's a lot going on, and it's so rewarding just to see how their life's journey, and how the things that they're into, and what makes them happy, and how they express themselves. Oh, absolutely. As a dad, who very much feels like a kid most of the times myself, so it's hard to put into words. It's just how fun and rewarding that experience is alone, just to kind of witness it, witness their journey. So
Well, it sounds like you're living the dad dream. That's to me, kids have always seemed like a lottery ticket. Like you don't know what you're going to get, right? You might win. They might be in all the things you're into, and you might have a great time, but they could be completely the opposite way. And I mean, you'd hope that that's the parts of you that go into them are enough that can make you connect with them. But to me, there's always this inherent like I want, I know enough people that their kids have gone the other way, or they just turn into kind of assholes. So to me, it's like whenever I hear these heartwarming stories about like, families that really stay connected and that they all have these lovely, connections with art and stuff, it makes me, that's like if anything makes me miss, or not really miss, but regret not having children. And I don't regret it, but the idea that it's just like, well, maybe that would have been cool, so it sounds like you're living the dream.
awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks a lot, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, cool. Well, is there anything besides that's coming up for you that you wanted to talk
Uh,
about?
Quick Stops with Kevin Smith. That's the third issue just dropped yesterday, the 27th.
Those are like short stories from the View Askew universe, or is it
It's
just fans like?
the first volume was an anthology, so every issue was different. The second volume that we're on right now, tells the origin of Mooby the cow.
Oh, nice.
And it's a very dark origin. It's probably some of the darkest stuff that Kevin's ever written. So that's been fun to kind of like go through and like, oh my God, wow. Other
One
than
of my
that,
favorite, Dogma is probably one of my favorite movies by him.
oh yeah,
I always say that I think his best movie is Red State. But
it's a fantastic movie. It
it's
really
like,
is.
and I love Kevin Smith, like, but he has this sort of style, in most of his comedies. But as far as like what I guess people would consume a serious film or consider a serious film, for acting, for tone, for theme, that one hits all the beats. I'd say it's his best, his best film in that way, as far as like fitting the mold that like, most movies have to fall into to be considered legitimate cinema. But I feel like, everything he does is fun. But that one to me is just like such a well done serious film that it really
It
shows
is. Oh
how
yeah.
broad his range is.
Oh,
Like,
absolutely. And yeah, absolutely, and especially it also goes, it shines through his, when he writes comics too.
Yeah.
But
But
no,
Dogma is probably a second because I find religious fanaticism and more just like as far as when it comes to the horror side of things, one of the most disturbing tropes you can get. So that's why
oh
I
yeah,
like Red State a lot, and Dogma has a good fair share of that too. But also someone who doesn't really have any sort of a respect for religion, really. I mean, I wouldn't say that sounds terrible. I wouldn't say I don't respect it. I just don't. It's not for me.
it's
So
not.
I
No,
do respect it, but it's just not for me. So
I hear you.
to
Yeah,
play with it and have fun with it the way he does, especially someone who is religious to make that film, and poke fun at his own sort of beliefs.
yeah.
It shows a lot of creativity. It's a really cool movie. So yeah, the movie part of that is always something that sort of stuck with me as being the literal golden calf that
Yeah.
modern society brings back and kind of forgets the lessons of the old. That's really fun. That's
Yeah,
cool.
no, it is. No, I love it, and I love, I'm a big fan of his movies too. So getting to also play in that world too, it's also really fun to see how it's fun on two fronts because as a fan you get to see these more adventures with these characters, and then as a collaborator and you're like, oh my God, I get to play in this world. And so no, it's a lot of fun. To share the work that we've been doing on this series. And for TMNT, the pre-order is probably going to launch very soon. We don't have a set date for it yet, but yeah, we'll throw up that all over my social media, when you can pick up a copy of TMNT 150.
Awesome. Well, I look forward to it. This sounds awesome.
Awesome.
Well, thanks so
no,
much for being on, man. Much appreciated.
thank you. This was a lot of fun, and let's hope we get to chat again sometime.
Oh, 100% next time I'm in I always say whenever I'm in the Toronto area, I'd like to try to have some kind of a dinner with a lot of the folks I've talked to.
Oh
'Cause
yeah.
there's so many of them now. Adam Gorham's so nice. Well, he's been out here for the East Coast Comic Expo, but we have I have another podcast that my friend Davin, who would have reached out to you originally, had me and him do, which is the X-Men. We do the X-Men cartoon from the 90s.
Oh yeah.
And we
Cool.
watched every episode, went through it. Now we're doing the new series that just started.
Oh, that's awesome.
So he's been on quite a few of that. Dave, I mean, lives there. I know Mike Ruth is someone that I've connected with through Troy and other folks who's up there. So quite a few folks that I've talked to, Calman and other ones as well. So
Oh, for sure. Oh
um,
yeah. Oh man, just a swell group of guys.
it's
Absolutely.
crazy. And I know some of them all connected through this drink and draw stuff, and it's something they started doing out here because there's a few people that work for Marvel that live in Nova Scotia, like Ed Brisson and Jed McKay. I think Jed McKay's in PI, but there's others that are around. So it seems like we're getting our own mini version of it out here, but certainly not as expansive as the Toronto market is. So
No, that's awesome. Well, again, thanks again, man. Yeah, let's keep in touch.
awesome, we'll do. Good talking to you, Tom.
Yeah, you too, man.
Thanks. All right,
Have a good one.
bye bye. There it is, my conversation with Andrew Thomas. Very great talk with a very great guy. Very lucky to have him on the show, and big thanks to our producer Davin for helping make that a reality. Speaking of Davin, you should go tune into our X-Men review show, which is called X-Rated, the X-Men Anime Review Show, which is available wherever you get your podcasts. And we do live episodes on Tuesday evenings. I think it starts usually around 9 or 10 Atlantic Standard Time, whatever time zone you're in, that will differ, but you can look that up. I'm sure you can. I believe in you. I know you know how to use a computer. We have been talking about and reviewing the X-Men cartoon from the 90s, and of course now we're talking about X-Men 97, as that is coming out, and it is so good. It's fantastic. Fantastic. So, check us out over there. Like, subscribe. Wander over to Apple. Give me a rating, review. Drop me a message, I'd like to mix it up. Send me some messages. Whether you like something, whether you don't. Hell, let me know. I don't mind, getting into the weeds. Let's get there. Let's go out and discuss it. But I know I often thank you guys for being fans of the show, and I'd just like to do so again. You guys are fantastic. Keep on rocking. Spread the word. Let folks know I'm out here doing my thing. And hopefully we'll grow together. Emotionally, physically. Physically, we'll get fatter. Spiritually, metaphysically, in whatever way you want, we'll grow in that way. Speaking of growing, be sure to tune in next week for another episode of the show. Just syncing out some final guest options for that. But stay tuned to social media. We'll announce all that as it comes. But in the meantime, stay safe, have fun, read some comics, and be kind to each other. The Graphic Histories Podcast is a proud partner of the United Federation of Podcasts.